This week, a report broke that the FBI and Justice Department were investigating extortion, money laundering, bribery, and kickback schemes between Russia and the U.S. aimed at growing Russia's nuclear industry in America. In fact, the 2010 agreement, which sold 1/5 of the U.S.'s uranium reserves, was reached while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. The Senate Judiciary Committee last week started an investigation into the matter, including whether federal agencies knew the FBI was looking into possible corruption in 2009 before the deal was approved. But it doesn't stop there. The House Oversight Committee has also begun looking into the Obama-era deal in which a Russian-backed company bought a uranium firm with mines in the U.S. As most know, uranium is a key ingredient in making nuclear weapons. Many believe top officials in the Obama administration knew about Russia's criminal intent, yet allowed the transfer to go through. Follow the names. The Department of Justice, headed by Eric Holder, in charge not only of the original investigation, but also on the committee that approved the sale of the uranium. The case itself, handled by Rod Rosenstein, the same person who told Jeff Sessions to recuse himself from the Russia investigation so that he could appoint Bob Mueller to try to connect Trump to Russia. Ironically, the head of the FBI at the time, Bob Mueller, the man now appointed special counsel to connect Donald Trump to Russia. The FBI agent handling the case, Andrew McCabe, the same man who was handling the email investigation into Hillary Clinton, McCabe's wife got $675,000 from Clinton companion Terry McAuliffe, also connected to the Clinton Foundation. So guys, we have a lot of connections here that, to me, is hard to say that it's a coincidence. And so, you know, there's been the big investigation going on into the Trump campaign and possible collusion with Russia. And so now we're seeing possible collusion between Obama administration officials, the Clinton Foundation, and Russia now. So Micah, do you think that the Clinton Foundation should be investigated by the FBI?
I definitely do. I don't think this is the first time there have been questions that rise to the level of, wait a minute, this is something that needs to be looked into. I mean, we have several times where, you know, obviously, and Trump brought this up throughout his campaign about, you know, questions with this and with other situations where the Clinton Foundation was used as sort of like, I guess, a shelter for money for the Clintons. I think that it really needs to be looked into. We don't know how many skeletons they might be hiding, and I hate to put it that way, but it just sounds like the Clinton family they have this long dynasty of you know, being in politics, and I'm sure they've paid off a lot of people to do a lot of things that probably aren't legal. So
it keeps reminding me of when Trump was first elected president, everyone calling for his tax returns, but where are the Clinton Foundation's tax returns at this point?
Yeah, we need those. Yeah.
Well, and an interesting thing that I found reading this story, which I mean we've heard of with the Russia investigation into Trump, but actually 2 weeks before this deal was signed was when Bill Clinton gave the talk in Russia for $500,000. 5 times the amount that people claim was spent on Facebook ads by Russia to influence the election. So.
I think there's a lot more going on with Russia than I think a lot of people in American politics than people want to admit. I think that's what this story kind of makes us need. So we need to realize on both sides of the aisle, everywhere, it's just a lot more going on than we think.
Well,
correct.
If you're Russia, you got to be pretty excited because you're getting a lot of news time.
You
over
are.
here.
Yeah, you really
are. News time. I mean, not exactly positive.
A lot. And it's not
any
exactly
publicity is good publicity.
Yes,
exactly.
Thank you very much.
In the words of
I'll
Trump.
have you cite that one in my last episode of Politically Challenged.
But moving on, Rebecca, do you think that selling this uranium to the Russians put our national security at risk?
Has it been proven that we've sold them uranium yet?
Yes.
It's totally proven. Yeah, probably. I don't know a lot about uranium, gonna be super honest. I don't know a lot about nuclear weapons, gonna be totally honest. But yeah, I'm sure selling to Russia put us at a risk. We've never exactly been equals with Russia on any world war. You know, we were only ever cordial with them in times that we had to be.
Right.
So why are we now putting ourselves in bed with them?
To go off what you're saying, Rebecca, I think a lot of this problem just stems from the fact that it was hidden. If this comes out to be 100% fact, I feel like most of this problem is the fact that it was hidden for so long. And to be quite honest, the Clintons are still trying to hide it.
Exactly.
Right.
And they're not just hiding it by not talking about it. They're hiding it within their foundation.
They're burying it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why I was talking about skeletons hidden. I mean, that's, well, we got to think about too how nuclear weapons have really gotten everybody. We don't have like the situation in the 80s where everybody was scared to death we're going to have a huge nuclear war or whatever. But I think with the tensions and heightened with North Korea and everything, that this is really going to get a lot of attention as more comes out because people are concerned.
Exactly.
If we have North Korea doing things, they have Russia maybe revamping and redoing and having more power in their nuclear arsenal.
Exactly.
That's definitely a concern.
Well, I mean, also, by selling this to them, we're basically inviting them into our national security plans, what we're doing. Why do we have so much uranium that we can sell?
Why are we selling it?
Exactly. Are we not revamping
That's a
ours
good
if we're
question.
letting Russia and
Right.
Korea go and do their stuff? Aren't we going to need that? I mean, we are going into troubling waters with our new presidential leader. I just don't feel totally confident in our national security. So I don't really enjoy stories where other nations are just
Getting nukes.
getting all up in here with all of our
Honestly, though, if
Key
there were
rocket man.
Key rocket.
Key rocket man.
Yeah.
I mean, in all honesty, though, if we are in a situation where we're legitimately fearing another country is going to start sending nuclear weapons our way, it doesn't really matter at that point if we've sold uranium, because the whole world at that point is just not going to really be in working order, if you get what I'm trying to say
of
here.
course.
So I feel like in the long run, this kind of just shows just disregard for not just our country and possibly our citizens, but for the citizens of our world at the same time.
Well, and going off of that, I think this brings the perfect point. An underlying thing here, and that why I think we should be concerned about the uranium going to Russia for more than obvious reasons, is that a lot of people, and there's evidence to back, that Russia is the ones that helped Iran get their nuclear weapons.
Exactly.
And so I think that, that's scary, especially with us being very close allies with Israel and the tension that is between those
Well,
two
and it
nations.
would be awful if we sell, and which apparently sounds like we did, we sold
Right.
this uranium to Russia. If they turn around and again, it's used on us or used on our allies, which could,
Exactly.
I mean, that's
be
on
easily
us.
happen. Yeah, definitely.
That'll be our fault. And I mean, no offense, Clinton
Oh, no, you
doesn't
can
really
have-
care what she does to harm our soldiers or our country by her actions.
No
as
need for
she
the
has
precursor of no offense.
shown. Not offended by what
No,
I
no, no.
said?
Offense
Yeah.
intended.
Yeah,
Offense
you're
intended.
offended by that?
Because
I mean,
no,
she
no,
doesn't
no, no, no.
care.
I'm not offended by it. I'm saying offense intended towards her and the Clinton family. I don't understand how they're able to sleep at night with as much as they have to cover up. And like we can, I mean,
Well, the thing
Mason,
is-
your next question doesn't even have to be about uranium. It can be about anything, because it's amazing how much the Clinton Foundation has had to work to cover up.
Well, the thing is, the Clintons aren't even, like, everything they're doing, it's not all against America. It's just predominantly, they're not helping their own country, the country that they say they want to help run, the country that they say they're fighting for with all of their political actions, yet all of their hidden actions through their foundation all seem to be shady, backstreet, alley kind of interactions.
Right.
Like,
Therefore, acts against America.
And
Yes.
I think
Therefore, acts
that brings up the perfect point. One reason that a lot of people believe that the Clinton Foundation does need to be investigated is because of the large amount of donations that they get from foreign nations and foreign leaders,
lot.
especially while she was Secretary
Secretary
of
of
State.
State.
Are we
Yeah.
aware of which countries that they received donations from?
I know that
Russia, obviously.
Yes,
Right.
Russia-backed officials is one. I know the Saudis is another huge one that has been in the news before. But that goes to my next question, and Christian, I'm going to send this one to you. But an AP story found that more than half the private visitors Clinton received at the State Department while she was secretary were donors to her family foundation. Isn't that concerning?
Yeah, it's no surprise though to me, because you have to continue to stick with the hand that feeds you. And if there's one thing that the Clintons have proven, they will certainly stay true to those who are feeding their funds. And in terms of, we're talking about traveling as far as they are to meet with these people, having these people travel to them, and the private meetings that they're having that we don't get to know the details about. It just makes you wonder all the time, because there's a lot of unknown, and we can constantly go back to what's swept under the rug, but at the end of the day, we'll never know the depths, because it is shady and it's scary to think about. And what's even worse is that it's not just the Clinton family. It spreads all across
It's a fungus.
our political spectrum.
What concerns me most is she was having these people who were donating to her family foundation in our White House.
Right.
In our political holding house, where all of the people with all of the statements, all of the information are there. She even as what was she again? Secretary of State. That's it. I was like, State Secretary, that's not it. Secretary of State. She had more access to information that she could have been giving to these donors.
And it just on a private, on her email server. That
she could have been giving this information that she was getting for a job that we were allowing her to have to benefit her family, or to benefit herself directly, or to benefit whatever side alley actions she was doing through this foundation right underneath our noses. And I mean, I hate to sound like that person that watches conspiracy theories, but I am. A little communism back in the day, people had that Cold War and they were arresting people for suspicion of communism and terrorism. And no offense, but her foundation is not leading me to believe that she is exactly American.
And I mean, one thing that I really, really want to point out about this situation is that, all of these foreign leaders that were donating to her company were in the White House. The White House, in which most citizens will not be given access to at this point.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, there used to be a time where you could just, schedule a tour and just go walk through the White House, but it is not deemed safe anymore. So why are we allowing these people who the only connection they have to this country is that they've given the Clintons money, that they're in our White House, and when I can't go walk in our White House without an actual reason.
Exactly.
Well, if you can just save up a couple million, donate to the
Well, yeah, I guess I'll just do that next. Who needs to pay for calls?
It's simple.
As much as I would love to have her name dominate this scandal, it's not just Hillary Clinton.
You are.
Exactly.
And I
Because
think
you bring up
that's
Eric Holder,
right.
who has also had many questions brought up about things that he has done,
Correct.
Investigation-wise, and Rosenstein, and many others who
Holder, Mueller.
Mueller,
Mueller, excuse
and
me.
Mueller's currently investigating
Trump.
the whole Russia collusion.
Which is funny how it works out.
And so how can we, again, there's just so many hands in back pockets. It's
And
not
so
even
how this
funny.
whole thing kind of got started was back in 2010, somebody who worked for the firm that was bought by the Russians came forward, it was an American, came forward as a confidential informant to the FBI. But then the FBI had him sign a non-disclosure agreement, which we talked about earlier in the Weinstein case, that a lot of actors and actresses had signed, when they had filed civil suits against him. But this prohibited him from coming forth with this information, not only to the public, but there was a special clause added in there saying that he couldn't come forth to Congress about this as well. And so additionally, not only would he face a civil fine if he did, but could face jail time. Which if you talk to legal experts, and I've done a lot of research on this story before the show, is almost unprecedented and has never been done before.
No,
So Amber, does this make it seem like there's something to hide here to you?
I mean, I didn't need that information to think that there was something to hide in this story, honestly. The fact that there are so many big names linked to the sale of this uranium, the fact that there were basically no ties until this one person came out and said something that was being kept silent. And then, you get to the very basic fact that people like Mueller are out there, forcing his investigation while making sure no other part of Russia is being looked at. there is something that we do not know.
Right.
And that I don't know when we're going to be given this information, when it will be released, or if it ever will be released.
I'm doubting it.
I'm doubting
I
it
doubt
as
it
well,
too.
because it's going to come back to a whole problem with national security. And again, the Clinton Foundation is very good at getting out of a sticky situation.
Well, Hillary's a lawyer, so.
It's
Very,
true.
very good. It's almost scary impressive at how they've gotten out.
Well, to wrap up this topic, recently there's been a lot of pressure in the media for Jeff Sessions, who is now Attorney General, to lift the gag order on this confidential informant. And it said that he could just do it with a stroke of a pen. However, his Deputy Attorney General is none other than Rod Rosenstein. So we're going to have to see, where this plays out and what both the committees will find out in their investigations. But coming up, with racial tensions high in the nation, one Georgia school district is talking about canceling a school dress-up day after one child called another student his slave. We'll have more about the story next.
A story came out on October 10th from Cobb County, Georgia, when a school participated in a Civil War dress-up event. The day was meant to explain battles in the area, teach students the history of the Civil War, and give students an opportunity to be creative. The event itself didn't cause any problems at first, but what happened during the event itself, after a student in costume called an African American student a slave. A mother has voiced deeper concerns. The student, who was a friend, stated, quote, "He was a plantation owner and the boy was his slave," end quote. Corey Davis, the mother in question, understands the importance of teaching about the Civil War, but wishes for the period attire dress-up option to leave the table. She says that it has been a battle and the school refuses to confirm or deny the continuation of that part of the curriculum. The school has not issued a statement about what the student allegedly said, but a spokesperson stated, quote, "No student was required to dress up in period attire, and any student that did so was not instructed nor required to dress up in any specific attire," end quote. Now, this first question that I have, I just wanted to go to each of you at the table. I'm not sure which of you would feel most interested in giving me your opinion, but do any of you agree that this period era clothing could pose a problem?
I think in an educational setting, or any setting for that matter, I think it could, because I think about, and I know a lot of schools don't do this anymore, when Thanksgiving would roll around, they'd have students dressing in little, pilgrim hats and then little Native American with their little feathers and things, and call them Indians and other things, which to me, as having Native American heritage, that's very offensive. I mean, I don't think that, and now more people are, politically correct and everything, but I don't think it's appropriate, because all that's doing is establishing in those students' mind, this is what we need to do. And it's not an accurate depiction of what really happened in history anyway. All these pilgrims did was, they came over and they brought a bunch of disease, and they basically took the Native Americans' lands, and here we are with a tiny little patch of land up in South Dakota or whatever, and they've still got the big pipeline over there. So I don't think it's a very appropriate way for an educational system to teach history. No.
I wouldn't have picked it either. Like the story says, I do think it's very important to discuss this issue with young kids, but yeah, I can see where it's just a recipe for disaster, I guess you could say.
First thing, I have never had a
it's
problem
not your turn.
with Thanksgiving. Okay, all right. So I understand how it can be
You
seen
just
as
like the
offensive.
turkey. That's
You're
all
right. Okay, I can understand how it can be. Don't forget the stuffing.
And the
all
stuffing,
Don't
right?
make me
And the
hangry.
sweet potatoes, I get it.
Pumpkin pie too. But anyway, we're going to
Yeah.
chill on the list. I can understand where it can be offensive. I do think at the same time, we've been a little touchy in terms of how we. Now, I almost laughed a little bit at the quote from the child because I wanted to know how old he actually was. The
He
reason
was
I found
in 4th grade, I believe.
Okay,
Okay,
because
so 10
in
probably.
a sense, there's some innocence in children that we take videos of all the time of them saying things that are extremely offensive to the average person, but coming out of a child's mouth, we find humorous. And like you said, around maybe 10 years old, depending on the maturity level, how much they actually knew about the topic itself could change. But the dressing up, I cannot say that I have Native American heritage. I cannot say that. But I never once as a child thought of it in any way as it being offensive. We thought it was mostly having fun. And although it may not have directly correlated with history, I think it was more seen as a fun thing, just as drawing hands on a piece of paper to make a turkey and outlining your hand with the feathers and all that fun stuff. It's just, I get what you're saying because I don't understand it from the firsthand perspective. But I don't think that there was foul nor harm intended in what the teachers had in the curriculum.
This is why we don't skip turns. I was also going to say that it really depends on the age group. Okay, so children dressing up who don't really understand the specifics of it, it's just a fun, creative thing for them to do. However, I wouldn't want my little 5 or 6-year-old going to school dressed up as a plantation owner any more than I would like my little 5 or 6-year-old dressing up as a slave or a slave owner's wife or any of the various characters that they had available for the students to dress up as. 4th grade, I think by 4th grade, you've heard about the Civil War for many years in school now. You understand what it is. And honestly, my school did dress up things like that. We got extra credit. So yeah, dress up, get your extra 10 points, explain why you picked the character that you picked. I don't think there's anything wrong with dressing up if they understand the context of it. And there is a point that after a certain age, dressing up is not appropriate because then you know more about the political correctness and you know more about how it is offensive. 4th grade, you know what it is, you know why it happened, you know the specifics. You're not wrapped up in the political aspect of it as you are, say, in a high school.
Well, and I think that, one of the biggest things for me I can see how the mother would be upset about what happened.
I can agree with her feelings.
So a big thing for me would be to know, because I couldn't find a lot about this when I was, researching and looking through local news articles and stuff from around the Atlanta area, is how the teacher handled the situation.
That's what I had wished to know as well, and that's something that I feel like has been left out of this story. And that kind of brings up the next question, and in that, obviously this is a part of the curriculum of teaching about the Civil War during this time. And there was obviously something in the idea of that those children have learned, that boy that said that to his friend he obviously made the connection that African Americans at that time were slaves, and that people in the South who were predominantly white were mostly plantation owners or worked on a plantation or worked for that family. But I feel like there was obviously a disconnect in teaching exactly what that meant. So Micca, you were obviously against this. What do you think could be done to explain to these children why statements such as that could be negative?
I think these students need to go to a museum to see an Underground Railroad exhibit like what we have at Fort Donelson, maybe see the quilts that were made by the slaves to help them escape. To show them the shackles that the people wore, to show the wooden stocks that the people of African American descent were put in for hours, the whips that were used. I think that they need to see what happened.
No doubt.
I agree with that. I feel like in the education system, the emotional strain that people went through, the physical abuse, the mental abuse, also the rape culture that was around plantation owners would mistreat their females, and then after they raped or took advantage of them in any way, they would then use those children that were produced as free slave labor. And so with that, I do believe that education needs to be hyped up because it is so underplayed. The emotional abuse and the physical abuse that goes through it, a lot of that is not touched on in high school, and even then, it is not presented in the extreme ways that it actually happened. So just because of the age difference, I think a museum would be the best approach compared to reenacting being
Yeah.
Yeah,
dragged
I
around
don't think they necessarily
in
reenact
chains.
either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't need. It can be taken extremely far, but I apologize to finish your thought there. Go ahead.
It's fine. I was done, Christian. Go right ahead.
Okay, I'd actually rather hear from Amber to hear what her curiosity is on the rest of this topic, because I think we've touched pretty how this education in general it needs to be talked about.
Honestly, after reading this full story and seeing exactly how Davis, the mother, felt, how many people in this area feel, and how many educators feel about situations like this, this was meant to be something fun for the kids to be able to participate in, this dress up. However, I feel like there are other ways to participate in something fun to bring out this educational prospect. But it goes down to the fact that the Civil War was not fun.
No.
And I mean, I'm just gonna, come right out and say it. This was not a good time for our country. And I really just think that this should be something that is more talked about, that is actually, it doesn't matter what age you're at, children of any age need to be educated on this topic. Because, I mean, like you were saying, this is a lot of the violence that is portrayed during this time is mostly taught at a high school age, because we don't want to frighten children.
Well,
but
even then, it's not taught
it's just
at the level.
it's
that
not
should
and
be.
not taught at the
Like-
level it needs to be. But honestly, at the age of 10 years old, with the media that we have at this point that portray violence on an everyday scale, we could explain it to these children, or explain it in such a way that they can understand why it was horrible. And obviously, if this boy was able to say this, he obviously did not completely understand the magnitude.
Or
what
he
he was
heard
saying.
it from somewhere.
Oh, he
though.
heard it from
Right.
someone.
You know.
I
Had to,
think
absolutely.
I think he recognized plantation owners, slaves. I think he recognized the two different roles that were being played that day. I don't think he recognized the magnitude and the meaning of those roles.
Right.
Exactly.
Because I'm sure if he had known that, he would not have been
Well,
proud
that's
to
when
be
you
a
cut it off.
plantation owner.
That's when you cut it off, though.
Exactly.
Especially
Right.
at a
You
young
have
age,
to-
you have to cut that off.
You have to
That's-
teach
that's-
them that it's not a good thing to be a plantation owner, that it was not a positive point in our country. But with the media today, with all of the racial unrest that is happening currently in our country, how else are they going to learn if it's not being taught to them in school? Because they're not getting it from the media.
Exactly.
And
They have to get it from their parents, and they have to get it from the teachers. And obviously there was something missed, but we don't know what the teacher said. We don't know how they reacted. We don't know their curriculum. These are things that have been left out of this story. And I mean, they're still not issuing any statements, I believe you said. They still haven't.
The school itself has not issued any statements on how
Yes.
the situation was dealt with.
Exactly. And so the school could probably bring to light the curriculum, and then they can take it to the school board and discuss how to change it where it better educates the children while also bringing in that emotional aspect and not that, I guess, offensive aspect that the dress up brought into play.
Because honestly, this story I feel like isn't a story about racial unrest, and it's not a story about white versus black. This is a story about how our education system is failing children
Yes.
right now.
Yes.
This is a situation that has obviously shown the depth of which we are not teaching these children.
Well, and I think that's why we do need to use this as a learning experience. I mean, I don't know if you all saw the article that came out probably a couple weeks ago, maybe about a month ago, about, I think it was a school system in Alabama that had banned To Kill a Mockingbird as a book in their curriculum
Yes.
because
It is Alabama, so.
because it made students feel uncomfortable. But that's what
Sorry.
the book is supposed to
supposed
do,
to,
yes.
and it's supposed to teach you about a past that we don't want to go back to, a difficult time in our history that
To
we
be
don't
on the
want to go
side of
back
the
to.
teachers, because I have several friends who do teach at the elementary school level. They are struggling to, I mean, these kids are being taught and having standardized testing in first grade. Okay, so they're struggling to teach them all these elements and then still teach them the quality that they need. So it's not, I don't know if it's a failing, it's just our educational system obviously has a lot of work that it needs, but I wouldn't lay blame on the teachers themselves.
definitely
Right.
not.
But I feel like there's a lot of, like you said, there's so much more depth to Civil War history. I mean, we could talk for days about it. I mean, there's so much to it.
Right.
But there's a problem with with, again, like, we have children who go home who don't have parents who read with them, who don't have parents who will sit and say, okay, there's this series called Roots that has a lot of serious themes in it, you know, that they don't get to see, or, you know, when they're of proper age. Probably it's a very very realistic and violent miniseries to watch, but it gives you an idea of what really was going on.
Right. And we could sit here and talk about this all day, but unfortunately, that's the end of our program today. Thank you for tuning in with us today on Politically Challenged. Be sure to watch more content on our YouTube channel, APSU-TV Clarksville. Have a great day.